Hey, welcome to the channel today. Listen, we're going to talk about the 5 reasons that the single plane swing is an easier golf swing. Now, before I get into all this and show you this, let's talk about what easier actually means. And it's the first reason is a single plane swing simplifies the absolute most important moment of the swing, which is what? Impact.
What is happiness? Happiness is achievement. What's the father of achievement? Motivation. What's the mother? Encouragement. The fine golf swing is truly achievement. Man may lie, cheat, and steal for gain. But he'll never gain the golf swing. To gain the golf swing, man must work. It's work without toil. For those of us who know and love it, golf is truly happiness.
Okay, now we're going to talk about how it does that. So the second one is the swing has less movement. Let's talk about that. Now here's why it has less movement. Because in order for me to start the club on the plane where I impact, I have to put my body in a position that allows it to happen. So less movement means the body moves less to achieve impact. Because everything I'm going to talk about here has to do with making that moment of impact easier. That's why I talked about it as number 1. So how does the position of my body make the moment of impact easier? Here's how it does it. So when I'm tilted correctly, and I think you have to understand that at impact, you have a specific amount of tilt and rotation and side bend. So a perfect impact position would look like this. And you can see I have tilt, side bend, and rotation, all those 3 elements. And notice the club returns back to its plane. Doesn't it make sense now that if I set up with the tilt, I set up with the side bend, and it makes it easier to get back to impact? So my body moves less. I don't have to go, most people stand straight up and down, they have their hands too low, and then they got to create all this motion, lifting, rotation, and tilting to create impact. And I'll tell you this, people who try the single plane swing kind of for the first time always find the weirdest thing is the initial tilt. If you look at my tilted address, it's very similar to the tilted impact. So I'll hit one, I'll show you. So you look at my tilted address position, and you see that it's very similar to where I am in impact. So that's the first thing you get right. And by doing that, you move your arms less, you move your body less, you have less movement. Now, let's go to the next thing about movement. When I have my body in the correct tilt, here's what it does to my lead arm. And I talk about this all the time. The lead arm goes into, because I'm tilted, it can go to its range of motion. We're going to talk about this in this series, is range of motion. My trail hand is non-rotational, right? Non-rotational. So now, because of body position, I have less movement and less rotation. So that's the third thing, is less rotation. Well, how does it do that? Let's go through this. What you want is efficiency. In the golf swing, if I'm going to say less rotation, there's a lot of things I can do. First of all, because I'm tilted, the tilt helps me reach a limit. We're going to talk about this as well. And then the arm has an ideal rotation to it, okay? Ideal rotation, ideal amount of rotation. So, in other words, that's the most efficient movement the lead arm can make, all right? The trail hand, because I'm tilted, is non-rotational from here to here. So it's a non-rotational motion. So now my body has, because of the tilt, has ideal rotation of the body, ideal rotation of the arm, and limits the rotation of both the lead arm and eliminates the rotation of the trail arm. I know it's a lot here, right? But again, you have to understand that it's mechanics of the swing, and by positioning my body correctly, by getting the club to start on the single plane, it creates an efficient movement to where it makes it easier to get to what? Impact, right? Okay, Now, so let's go through these again. You have making it easier to get to impact. You have less movement, more efficient, and less rotation. So the fourth reason is that it's about lifting in space. Now, to understand the conventional swing, let's go into that just for a second. And here's the thing about conventional golfers, and I don't know if you're looking at this, maybe you're going to try the single point swing, but conventional golfers don't really know this is happening because it's part of the necessary movements of a conventional swing. When you stand too close to a golf ball and you hang your arms down, which I believe is the biggest mistake in golf, you run into a big problem. You don't have enough space. So you have to lift the body. So the body can lift, toes can lift, you can spin and lift, you can compress the spine. There's all these different versions of lifting the body, which conventional golfers do. So the biggest thing about the single plane swing that makes it easier is watch what I do here. I go the proper distance from the ball. And when I say proper distance from the ball, you got to realize it's based on what we talked about in the very first thing, the angle of the club, right? So I got the club on the plane. That's the distance I need to throw because that's where it's going to impact. So the biggest thing is my distance from the ball creates this space. When I have the proper spacing, the body no longer has to lift. It no longer has to make room for the club getting into impact. So there's that impact thing again. It's making impact easier because I'm starting, and now I'll hit this, and I'm impacting in the same space. All right, space is a big deal, but I'm creating it to start with because of the body position that makes it easier to get to impact. That's what's going to save your back as well because you're not having to compress the back. You already have the space, so that's a big back saver as well. Now let's talk about number 5, which is my favorite thing, which is range of motion. Now this gets into the biomechanics of it. The biomechanics of the swing has everything to do with because we've positioned our body in the correct position to get to impact, because we have because we have less movement, we have less rotation, and we have the proper spacing, right? Biomechanics plays a big part. When I hold the club correctly, it's reached a range of motion limit of the arm. That's because of tilt. Think about this. If I had a wall here, and I've got to get the back of the hand, which is the club face, right, square to this wall, doesn't it make sense that there's an ideal tilt and range of motion of the arm? So if I'm going to square this hand at the ball at impact, position of the body, the tilt allows for me to hit a max range. Think of this. If the max range, I call it mistake proofing a golf swing. I can only go that far with my forearm. Well, I can only square the face. Now, this happens throughout the swing. Let me walk you through it. From address, because of tilt in the backswing, I've reached a range of motion. How did I do that? Tilt, side bend, and working against my trail leg. I can't go any further than this. Stabilize lower body. I'm coming down. Because of tilt, range of motion gets limited. Foot's on the ground. I can only get to impact correctly. So the entire concept of single plane is, and I'm going to back up one step, because you've hit these ideal positions, you're in a non-rotational position, you have the proper spacing from the ball, you've created limits and ideal range of motion limits, and this allows you to produce that moment of impact perfectly. Now that's a lot of detail on this. I'll go into tons of that throughout these videos on this channel. Stay tuned, give me a thumbs up, click the bell icon, and I'll see you in the next video.